and do the members' attendance and apologies. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Members, good afternoon. You're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Planning Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Guildhall, Derry on Wednesday, the 2nd of April 2025 at 2 p.m. We'll go through the attendance. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Online, Suzanne.
Alderman Neri McMorris. Alderman Neri McMorris.
Recording apologies, Suzanne.
Thank you. Alderman Janice Montgomery.
Here.
Councillor John Boyle.
Here, and just to record that Councillor Mooney will be running late, but is expected at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Caroline Devine.
Sure.
Councillor Sean Fleming.
And Sean?
Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Sure.
Councillor Fergal Leonard.
Sure.
Councillor Patricia Logue.
And Sean.
Councillor Sean Mooney is running late. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley.
Here.
And Councillor Grace Nealis
Carolina.
is remote. Thank you. And Councillor Paul Gallagher. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Just read through the broadcasting statement. I'd like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to be filmed and to use the storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website, www.derrystrabane.com. So can I ask for any declarations of members' interest at this stage? None indicated, but if we go through the meeting and something arises you want to indicate an interest in, please just let me know. Okay, moving on to the next item, Chairperson's business, and I want to ask Suzanne to go through the late items we've received. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Members, you'll have received an updated pack today, and the late items we've received to date are for item number 2, LA11 2020-0977F. It's a cover letter from Mr. Billy Henderson, a map, floor plans, plans and elevations, and a site layout plan proposing to reduce the scheme from 47 dwellings down to 5. We have received no application form, but on the basis of that information we have received, officers will require time to further consider that. So propose today, members, that we would not be able to deal with that one today.
Members content to defer that one to a later date? Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Late information for item number 3, LA11 2024-0490. We have 4 letters of support. Councillor Brian Hart, Councillor Paul Boggs, Councillor Raymond Barr, Councillor Jason Barr, and then we have photos and plan submissions from the agent, Declan Devine, received this morning. For item number 4, we have LA11 2023-19690, a letter of support from Councillor Declan Norris. And item number 5, LA11 2024-0807, section 54. We have 2 comments that were received online, members, between the Planning Committee report being prepared by officers and being published. So just for completeness, we've included those 2 comments for you as late information today. There's from a Mrs. McShane and a Miss McShane, and the case officer will consider those and address those in the presentation later today. In relation then to items 9 and 10, the papers in your packs, we have an email from Mr. Dean Blackwood and a statement to Planning Committee from Dean Blackwood on behalf of the Riverfoghan Anglers, which have all been circulated for your consideration later today as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. I just want to confirm our running order for you then. It'll be number 1, 3, 4 and 5. I'm just going to suggest at this stage we take, yeah, well, very shortly we'll take 4 or 5 minutes bit of reading time for that late information with regarding the planning applications. And then later on in the meeting, I'll give you more time to read the information with regarding items number 9 and 10. But first of all, I'm going to ask Suzanne to give you update on LDP.
Thanks, Chair. Members, you'll be aware in terms of the local development plan, we're currently out to consultation on the appraisal documents. That's the draft habitats regs assessment, sustainability appraisal, equality needs and the rural needs. Officers are considering that if members were of the view that it was acceptable, that it may be appropriate to have a special meeting before the end of April to consider the document, but that would mean having a meeting on the 21st of April. It's just putting it out there at the minute with you. It depends really on what we receive as well in terms of the consultation responses. But this is probably the last opportunity to notify you of that if that was going to go ahead. So I'm happy to take any views on that and any issues members may or may not consider.
Councillor Boyle.
Sorry, I didn't quite pick up. You mentioned a date there. Did you say on the 21st of April or before the 21st of April?
It's the week beginning the 21st of April, the week beginning the 21st of April.
That's Easter week. Just to let everybody know.
Yeah, it's Easter
That's-
week,
I'm
so
not sure I'll be about, but
I know.
so I don't know how everybody else is fixed.
Do you want to commence, Martin? No, yeah.
Just gonna say, I think I'm away that those couple of days as well.
It's not. Chair, I just don't think that's going to work for most people. I mean, not making excuses, but
Members,
I
that's-
won't be about myself.
Thanks, Chair. Members, look, just thanks for considering that and we're happy to take that on board. We will bring it then to the May Planning Committee.
Okay, thank you for that. So, listen, we're just going to give you 3 or 4 minutes there to have a look to that late information that is received for planning applications 3, 4 and 5. Okay, members, we'll just move on then to item 6. Any matters arising from the open minutes of the planning committee meeting held on Wednesday, 5th of March? Anybody online? Okay, then we'll move on to the planning applications. And the first one, Malachy will be taking us through it. It's LE 11 bar 2023 bar 2270 bar F, Ballygooden Road in Eglinton. Malachy, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 1 is an application LA 11 2023 2270. It's a full application for provision of a new 2.5-storey dwelling with associated hard and soft landscaping works at lands on Ballygooden Road, 100 metres to the south east of Eglinton Health Centre, Main Street, Eglinton, and the recommendation is to approve. The application site, as outlined in red, is located within the development limits of Eglinton Village. The application is located off the Ballygooden Road. It's a generally flat site. It's an agricultural field at present. There's a number of other uses in close proximity, including the Eglinton Medical Centre, and there's a vacant church hall to the north and west of the site. There are existing single dwelling houses situated on the Ballygooden Road opposite where the proposed dwelling house is to be sited, and there's also existing residential development at Grandson Park and Grandchester Park, which is located off the Ballygooden Road. The Castle River is to the west of the site, and to the south of the site is another field which is separated from the proposed site by a field hedgerow. The eastern boundary is formed by the Ballygooden Road and a small roadside hawthorn hedge, and there's a number of mature trees graduated down the Ballygooden Road. So just to give you an idea of the actual location, the block plan of the proposed dwelling. So it's a story and a half dwelling, and it's located in a portion of the field close to the boundary where the proposed community centre is, up to the north of the application site as outlined in red. The access road comes down through the larger field, which is not within the red line, and exits onto the Ballygooden Road at the bottom corner of the field, opposite the entrance of the existing residential property on Ballygooden Road. So it is a general view of looking from the opposite side of the road on Ballygooden Road towards the application site. You can see that's a fairly flat field. It falls slightly towards the hedgerows along Ballygooden Road. And you'll also notice in the photograph some of the large mature trees that are referred to in the case officer report. So the proposed dwelling is a 2.5-storey dwelling of modern design with a small annex on the side. And that's just the floor plans, which also are included in the officer's pack, to give an idea of the layout of the property. So in terms of the policy context, as set out in the case officer report, it includes the Derry Area Plan, the SPPS, the Derry City Strabane Local Development Plan, Draft Plan Strategy, PPS 3, PPS 6, PPS 7, and PPS 12 and PPS 15 in relation to planning and flood risk. So we consulted a number of bodies in relation to this planning application, including NA Water, DFA Roads, Environmental Health, both branches of Historic Environment Division, NIE Natural Environment Division, Lochs Agency, Shared Environmental Services, and DFA Rivers. No objections have been put forward by consultees, subject to compliance with conditions set out within their individual responses. There have been a number of representations in relation to the application. There have been 14 letters, including a petition, a letter from a concerned residents, a letter of support, and 11 letters of objection, which were not signed. So the letter of support relates to considering the applicants has taken all reasonable measures to mitigate any flooding risks associated with proposed development. The objections, again, which have been documented in the case officer report and considered, mainly centered on flood risk issues, including modelling of the floodplain, climate change scenarios, exceptions within policy, impediments to overland flows, surface water, increase of flood risk elsewhere, history of flooding within the area and within the village of Eglinton in general, and proper flood management. And there were some technical issues, process issues related to neighbour notification also raised within the representations. So officers have considered the application. The principle of a dwelling is deemed acceptable. It's within unzoned land inside the settlement limits within Eglinton as defined in the Derry Area Plan. It's compliant with the relevant policies relating to Eglinton. It's not within the ATC or any of the special areas that designate within the Derry Area Plan designation, and it's also compliant with policies SE1 within the Derry Area Plan. The application was accompanied by a number of reports, including a tree survey report, a biodiversity checklist, a flood risk assessment and drainage assessment. A layout has evolved during the application, and this is mainly to take into account a number of issues, including flood risk, and also to take into account protection of existing tree preservation orders in relation to the site access. So in terms of the residential use, the main policy consideration is set out within Planning Policy Statement 7 in relation to quality residential environments. Each of the criteria have been considered within the report, and these are centered around a number of issues. The first of all relates to the character and layout and of the proposed development. Officers consider that the proposed detached dwelling layout, footprint and orientation of the dwelling is acceptable, and the scale and massing of the dwelling proposed is appropriate to the character and topography of the site and of the village in general. The proposal satisfies SPPS and PPS in relation to the second bullet point within PPS 7, which relates to natural heritage and built heritage. We have consulted the Historic Environment Division, and subject to standard ecological conditions, they're satisfied that the proposal will have no detrimental impact. And they've also considered the proposal in the context of the setting of any nearby listed buildings within Eglinton, and given the separation distance between the application site and any such property, HED have no objections. In terms of the landscaping within the site, in particular the trees within the site, a tree survey was submitted along with a tree report and relevant site plans, which show one tree located in close proximity to the access. It's been considered by officers that this will not be adversely impacted by the development of the access, and namely, as existing levels are being retained and subject to the implementation of a geocell tree root protection system, there will be no adverse impact on the roots of this particular mature tree. In terms of amenity space, private and public, officers considered adequate amenity space has been made for the dwelling, and given the scale of the development, there's no requirement to provide more substantial public open space. Again, in relation to local neighbourhood facilities, given the scale of the development, it's not required, considered by officers, a requirement to provide local neighbourhood facilities for this development. The movement pattern provided within the site will connect with the existing network in Eglinton, and it's considered that the existing public footway and roadways are sufficient to adequately address this part of QD1. In terms of access, we've consulted consulted DFA roads, and adequate access and visibility displays are provided on the site and provided on the plans. In terms of the design and impact on heritage issues, the design of the 2.5-story dwelling is considered acceptable. HED have no issues in terms of the impact of the design on any listed buildings in the area. There are no unacceptable adverse effects in relation to existing or proposed properties, given in terms of overlooking, a loss of light, overshadowing, noise, and EHD have no objections. This is largely based on the location and the separation distance between the proposed site and any existing residential properties in the area. We're satisfied that the proposal has been designed to deter crime and promote personal safety, and there's no issues in terms of meeting this particular criteria within PPS 7. We've also considered PPS 7 addendum, which relates to safeguarding the character of established residential areas. And in terms of the density, size, and siting, officers are satisfied that the development is in compliance with the general pattern and character of the area and can meet the set out space standards within Annex A of the addendum of PPS 7. PPS 6 has been satisfied in relation to planning, archaeology and built heritage, given the positive responses from the consultees and subject to conditions being complied with in relation to archaeology. PPS 2 relates to, there's a number of issues in relation to this site, predominantly relating to the mature trees. A biodiversity checklist was submitted. There was no priority species confirmed to be present on site, although it was acknowledged that some of the roadside boundary trees, including the large oak trees, have moderate bat roost potential. However, it's been indicated in the proposed plans that these will be retained, and therefore there's no risk in terms of these potential bat roost hosting trees. Shared Environmental Service have stated there's sufficient buffer between the site and the watercourse, which would attenuate the release of any construction-related pollutants, and are satisfied that there will be no adverse impact on any priority habitats set out within the habitats regs. Lochs Agency have noted the request for various conditions by Rivers Agency and support these to ensure that there's no adverse impacts on the aquatic environment. Again, we've considered tree T4, which is the tree that is in close proximity to the driveway, and provided that the mitigation as proposed is complied with no concerns in relation to adverse impacts on this mature tree. The access and driveway will be finished in permeable surface, and there will be appropriate fencing constructed during construction to avoid any root damage. And in terms of the access itself, there will be some removal of hedgerow, approximately 10 to 15 metres of vegetation along the roadside to facilitate the access. And a condition will be added to encourage replacement of this with further native species. Therefore, taking all these issues into account, officers are satisfied that the relevant policies within SPPS and PPS 2 have been complied with. The application has indicated that they'll be using the existing services and any water have no objections and have provided advice that to be attached as an informative to any approval. In terms of PPS 3, the applicant has submitted a block plan showing adequate visibility displays, and DFA roads have no objections subject to conditions. So that leaves the policy consideration of flooding, which relates to, it's cross-cutting across a number of policies, including PPS 15, SPPS, and also the local development plan, the emerging local development plan. So we've consulted DFA Rivers in terms of the location of the dwelling as proposed in the block plan. At present, they've indicated that the most up-to-date version of the flood maps indicate that the vast majority of the site is outside the 1 in 100 year fluvial floodplain, and that includes the dwelling and parking area. The 1 in 100 fluvial floodplain does encroach on the periphery of the site and in a small patch within the site. So we're talking about the site here, we're talking about the red line and not the blue area. Rivers have requested that the access to the site and the gardens in the affected zone will remain at existing levels. That is to say that there will be no land raising on these zones. The proposed dwelling finished floor levels of 13.79 OD is included as a condition, and that the flooded area is protected from impediments likely to impede the flow of water, including landscaping, walls, impermeable fencing, and land raising, and any future developments by way of a condition. And added to that, officers have recommended a condition relating to the removal of permitted development rights, which would relate to any small-scale permitted development rights that that an owner would normally have in relation to extensions or annexes or walls or fences, etc. So looking at the detail of the 1 in 100 fluvial flood plan, the updated maps, which have been received by DFA Rivers as recent as the 7th of February 2025, the vast majority of the site is outside the 1 in 100 fluvial floodplain. It approaches slightly, as you see in the red line, there's two small triangulated areas within the red line. Within the report, officers do refer to some of the consultation responses from DFA Rivers, which indicates that there is some the flood maps, was what PPS 15 and FLD 1 asked officers to consider, do not show floodplains with depths less than 25 millimeters. And they've indicated that a central portion of the site is within the fluvial floodplain with a depth less than 25 millimeters. It's important to note here, but given that this isn't on the flood map, that FLD 1 doesn't apply, but it's important to understand the wider context of the site. So they've estimated that floodwaters would be conveyed through a portion of the site in a 1 in 100 year floodplain. Obviously, if they're blocking this flow path, it would increase flood risk elsewhere. And that goes to the crux of why they've proposed mitigation and conditions relating to removal of permitted development rights and having the access and levels as they are. So what we're talking about here is a very small depth of flow path coming through the driveway area through the site. It doesn't come through the actual location of the dwelling, etc. So there was a flood risk assessment supporting the application, submitted in support of the application. So as a result of that, they looked at a number of issues in response to the DFA Rivers initial responses. So the application dwelling was originally in another part of the site, but this has been relocated out of the 1 millimeter flow path emanating from the Castle River to position in the northern part of the site outside the protected area, and the garage has been removed from the layout. The existing levels of access and gardens are to remain to ensure the development is out of the fluvial flood risk zone and that there's no increase in flood risk from the development to elsewhere. Again, officers are content that this can be conditioned. Rivers recommended that the flooded area is protected from impediments likely to impede the flow of water, including landscape and walls, fencing and land raising, and any future development by way of a planning condition, which has been included in our recommendation. And again, in relation to the dwelling itself, they recommend a finished floor level. Again, this is conditioned. DFA Rivers noted the proposal will result in intensification of use with access into from the development, potentially restricting during extreme weather conditions. An informative will be imposed regarding evacuation procedures in an event of a flood in that scenario. So account has been taken of the peripheral increase of the updated flood maps of February 2025. The house remains outside the floodplain. The access to the site and gardens in the affected zones will remain at existing levels. There will be no land raising on these zones and is therefore considered minor development. It's considered all sources of flood risk to and from the proposed development have been identified, and there have been adequate measures to manage and mitigate any increase in flood risk arising from the development. In relation to further within FLD 1, currently within PPS 15, the climate change floodplain extents aren't included in the 1 in 100 year requirements. However, as we move now towards the the emerging LDP, that will be a consideration. So we have looked at the information given, and this has evolved during the process of the plan application. So flood maps NI at 1 in 100 years climate change fluvial extents indicate that they're to be part of the site with, again, relating to the area where the driveway is. Will come across the site. So in a climate change scenario, that will be included within the floodplain. So the proposal shows that the access driveway is located within the predicted 1 in 100 year climate change fluvial floodplain and is at risk of potential flooding in the climate change scenario. Rivers have advised that unless the plan authority considers appropriate to apply the exceptions principle, then the proposal would be incompatible with the overall aim and thrust of the regional strategic planning policy to prevent future development from risk at flooding. PPS 15 policy FLD1 does not refer to climate change. However, the proposed access and garden area are at risk of potential flooding in the climate change scenario and are therefore a material consideration. As these areas are considered minor development, mitigation conditions will ensure that these are adequate measures to manage and mitigate any increase in flood risk arising from the development to ensure no demonstrable harm is caused. And moving on to the requirement within the LDP, again, it's called FLD1 within the new local development plan. It does introduce a more definite direction to take into account climate change scenario, in particular, take into account the 1 in 100 year fluvial plain plus climate change allowance. So we've looked at this, and the draft plan strategy introduces a requirement to apply an exceptions test in relation to climate change. Officers considered the proposed development does not meet any of the exceptions set out in FLD1 of the new LDP. Officers do consider that in this scenario that all our material plan considerations can be brought into consideration in accordance with section 6.4 of the Planning Act. In this case, officers gave weight to a number of determining matters that would justify setting aside the requirement of applying and the exceptions test. Firstly, the main part of the development is the new dwelling, which is sited outside the climate change floodplain. The climate change floodplain will be across a garden area and proposed driveway, provided these are conditioned as proposed to remain at the same level. There'll be no adverse impacts such as blocking flood flow paths or increasing flood risk elsewhere. The evidential context is such that despite not technically meeting an exception test, there's no demonstrable harm in terms of increase in flood risk for the applicant or for anyone else outside the application site, provided the mitigation measures and conditions are applied and adhered to. We've also considered policy FLD3, which relates to surface water or pluvial flood risk. The site has been affected by surface water flooding. DFA Rivers have considered the drainage assessment in FRA and have advised conditioning the provision of permeable surface, which is a SUD solution for the access and car parking areas. The proposed drawings confirm that the levels in this area are to remain as existing, and DFA Rivers have recommended a condition that the post-development levels of the access outside fluvial floodplain are to remain as existing ground levels. It's also that the surface water runoff from the site is to be limited to greenfield runoff and will be discharged into NI Water's network. DFA Rivers have advised that calculations provided demonstrate that the provision of a drainage network to achieve this is feasible, and that NI Water have advised that surface water runoff can be managed by way of a planning condition. Therefore, officers considered the proposal is compliant with policy FLD3. We've also considered FLD2 and FLD4, but we do not believe they're engaged in relation to this particular application. For information and contained within the application report, DFA Rivers have referred to a proposed flood alleviation scheme for Eglinton. So DFA Rivers have advised that they're investigating a potential flood alleviation scheme for Eglinton, which is at feasibility stage and is a material consideration. However, officers cannot be given significant weight, as this is a preferred option and is only at detailed design stage. In conclusion, taking account of PPS 15 and the local development plan strategy, the proposed mitigation measures proposed will ensure that the proposal will not cause demonstrable harm in respect of flooding, and is therefore in accordance with SPPS and PPS 15 in the emerging plan. So overall, having considered all the relevant planning considerations, including objections, consultation responses, and as outlined in the case officer report, approval is recommended subject to the conditions set out in the case officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Malky, thank you for that. Members, just want to let you know in relation to this one that Neil Jenkinson from DFI Rivers is online. If you have any questions for him as we go through this application. First of all, I'd like to invite Gillian Simpson, and Gillian, I believe, is online, and she's going to speak on behalf of the objectors. Are you there, Gillian?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you surely, Gillian, very welcome along to Planning Committee today. And you have 5 minutes to address the Planning Committee, and I'll let you know about 4.5 minutes when you're nearing your time, and I'll ask you to sum up. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Gillian and I'm a resident of Eglinton. I speak on behalf of fellow residents, particularly those affected by the floods of 2017 and 2022. We strongly object to this planning application due to flood risk concerns and non-compliance with planning policy. In October 2024, DFI Rivers stated that the site was outside the 1 in the 100-year fluvial floodplain. However, following an updated topographical survey following the removal of illegal infill upstream and the publication of an updated flood map in February 2025, DFI revised its position, stating that the vast majority of the site, as defined by the red line, is outside the 1 in the 100-year fluvial floodplain. However, the 1 in the 100-year fluvial floodplain does encroach on the periphery of the site and a small patch within the site. The committee report therefore inaccurately states below figure 16 that the site is outside the 1 in the 100-year floodplain. DFI has advised that unless an exception under FLD1 applies, the proposal is incompatible with the overall aim and general thrust of the regional strategic planning policy in relation to flood risk. FLD1 explicitly states that development will not be permitted within the 1 in the 100-year floodplain unless an exemption applies. The report acknowledges that the proposal does not meet the exceptions test under FLD1 in the draft plan strategy, which mirrors those in PPS 15 FLD1. This application should be refused on this ground alone, as it breaches PPS FLD1 in that the development is within the 1 in the 100-year floodplain. PAC has confirmed that, subject to modifications, the draft plan strategy is sound, and DFI directed the Council on the 17th of December 2024 to adopt it. The committee report acknowledges that limited weight can be given to the draft plan. However, case law goes further. In Glebe Homes versus Castlereagh Council, Judge Humphrey stated that draft plans may have determinative weight in decision making. The draft plan strategy FLD1 expands the protection from the 1 in the 100-year floodplain by incorporating the climate change scenario. The committee report confirms that the site is within the 1 in the 100-year climate change floodplain, as shown in figure 16. Even allowing for limited weight to the draft plan, this application should be refused as it breaches the new FLD1 policy. The report attempts to justify the development under section 6.4 of the Planning Act, which states, where in making any determination under this Act regard is to be had to the local development plan, the determination must be made in accordance with the plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. In the case of Glebe Homes, Judge Humphreys commented, it is therefore clear that even when a decision maker is considering the application in light of an extant plan, the policies of an emergent plan can be taken into account and indeed may have determinative weight. This will be particularly so when the emergent plan is at an advanced stage of the process and no objections have been lodged to the particular proposal under consideration. And he goes on to say the local development plan therefore has statutory primacy subject to other material considerations, and added in this case that the draft plan strategy was at that time at a very advanced stage, having been subject to the rigours of a PAC examination and was subject to DFI direction to adopt, which, as I understand it, is a similar scenario to the emergent plan in Derry. This means that the development plan takes precedence unless an overriding material consideration exists. Such considerations must be significant enough to depart from the policies of the plan. The committee report cites as considerations that the dwelling itself is outside the climate change floodplain and conditions will prevent land raising and require permeable surfaces. While the development might be outside the climate change floodplain, it is completely surrounded by floodwater, cutting off access during flood events. This poses serious safety risk to both residents and emergency responders to and from the site in a flood event, with personal safety being a requirement of PPS 7 QD1. Reliance on planning conditions is also problematic. Enforcement can be difficult, and as this committee will know, based on previously mentioned infilling of the floodplain upstream, non-compliance is difficult to rectify once permission is granted. The correct approach and sustainable approach is set out as PPS 15 is avoidance, not mitigation. Due to time constraints, I can only briefly mention the eastern part of the site is known to be vulnerable to surface water flooding where it fronts on the Ballygodden Road. The site map shows that the site is lower than the Ballygodden Road, which is known surface water flow path during heavy rain. The site has also been identified for flood alleviation measures. Allowing this single house development would remove these mitigation options to the detriment of many existing residents already impacted by flooding. To
If I
conclude,
could just ask you to start wrapping up now,
yeah,
Gillian.
to conclude, I urge the committee to reconsider the officer's recommendation for approval. This development offends PPS 15, FLD1 and FLD1 in the emergent plan. It fails to meet the exception test. The other material considerations presented are not sufficient to depart from the requirements of the development plan. Overriding the requirements of FLD1 sets a dangerous precedent. The planning process must uphold policy integrity and protect the community from future flood risks. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gillian. If you just stay where you are, and I just want to invite members here in the chamber, and if there are any members online, if they have any questions for you.
Thank you.
Okay, is anybody online? Has any questions for Gillian? No, I'm not getting any indications of any questions for you, Gillian, so thanks very much again for attending the
Thank you.
committee today. Okay, now can I now invite Joe McGuinness, agent, to come forward to address the committee, please. Hello, Joe. You're very welcome to the committee today, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chairman, members, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I run Braidwater, and whilst we are an experienced house builder, I'm here in a personal capacity today as an application for a family home for himself. The family have been in the parish for generations, contributed positively to the community, and we hope that to continue. The principle of dwelling house in the application site is acceptable as the site is located within the development limits of Eglinton as defined in the Dairy Area Plan 2011. The application site is adjacent to the redevelopment of the Church Hall for the Church of Ireland, which is underway. The field that the application site sits within should have been capable of providing in the region of 40 homes given its zoning within the 2011 Dairy Area Plan, but given the site constraints, which are well rehearsed today, the current application for one family dwelling is the only realistic prospect within the 4.5 acre field. The proposed dwelling's footprint takes up 0.4% of the wider land ownership, and the remainder of the field outside the application site is to be to remain as agricultural land under my farm business. When purchasing the site from the church, we agreed to pay a financial contribution towards the building of the church, which is ongoing, and this will be subject to this application being successful. The proposed development is not at risk of flooding, nor will it result in an increase to flood risk elsewhere, given that we've adopted the precautionary principle considering climate change as part of the design process for the application. We employed a consultant to carry the flood risk assessment and numerous additions to that, along with drainage assessment, given the close proximity of the Castle River and the known flooding issues within the village. Every effort has been made by me and my team to not only meet the policy in relation to flood risk, but to go above and beyond in an effort to ensure that there's zero detriment to the surrounding area. I've tried to engage positively with objectors over the course of the application. I requested direct meetings. I requested meetings through community reps, one through a local politician, and I also held a public meeting in relation to this application, and no objectors have come forward, taking up the opportunity to discuss with me at any time any of the matters raised. Considerable effort has been put into the application by myself, consultants team, and indeed the case officers and officers on behalf of the council and statutory bodies to meet all the relevant requirements. I'd like to extend thanks to everyone involved for bringing this application to a conclusion and to be recommended for approval. It's important to me, given the time and effort put into the planning process to date, that I'd leave here with a decision one way or the other, and that without further delay or deferral, and I would kindly request that you consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Just where we are there a minute. Just see, are there any questions for Councillor Fleming? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming in to speak today. As you're obviously aware, flooding is an ongoing issue, an item of concern in Eglinton. You've mentioned how yourself and your team have taken every measure to mitigate and minimise any potential adverse effects on neighbouring properties around the proposed dwelling. I do note the conditions listed in the report, and I know that they've been touched on already, but perhaps you could, go into a bit more detail as to, the measures yourself and your team have taken to minimise any adverse effects in terms of flood risk to neighbouring properties. Maybe a bit more detail. Thank you.
Okay, at the outset, I suppose we employed a flood risk consultant. We took all of the available modelling information from surrounding areas, neighbouring sites and previous applications in order to put our flood risk assessment together. Whenever through the process, whenever we're aware that the climate change policy was starting to become a consideration, we relocated the house to the only part of the site, or the only part of that wider area of Eglinton that is not within the climate change area or flood area. We removed the garage, and we made sure that all of the access driveway areas were permeable so that no water could be held, and that we had a sustainable drainage system so that there would only be greenfield runoff from the site. So essentially that there was no impact at all as a result of building the house or the driveway. And we then designed the drainage so that not only would we have attenuation, but we would connect to the NI water system. And as you heard, we have approval from NI water for the principle of that. Over and above that, we spent a bit of time trying to understand the flood alleviation scheme, which is still deliverable within the remaining agricultural field, which wraps around the back of the church hall that's been built. The desilting of the bridge on Main Street is something that I think I can accommodate, and the flood alleviation scheme, if it was designed, is actually something that I would welcome and I could maybe help assist with. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to engage with the objectors, and that's something I'm still open to. Separately to this, there are some other things that can be done in terms of upgrading infrastructure in the Ballygodden Road to account for the runoff from the wider catchment that would help with around the back of Grantchester Park and over towards the back of the small industrial units there. So I suppose I spent a lot of time and effort to try and understand it personally, as well as using the team. And as I say, I'm committed to not only ensuring there's zero detriment, but also that I can contribute to solving some of the problems in the area as well.
Councillor Fleming?
No other questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody in the chamber? Is there anybody online? Is there any questions for Joe, please? No further questions. Well, Joe, thank you for attending. Okay, members, has anybody got any questions for Malachy on this one, please? Sir Bott?
Thanks, Chair. I think I know the answer to the question I'm going to ask, but I think it needs clearing up again, because the objector, Gillian, did reference the draft plan strategy in her presentation to us, and I think it's only fair that we receive the same clarity around the weight of the draft plan strategy as things currently stand. against the extant development plan that we're operating under. So the level of weight that we can give one to the other. Because if somebody mentions that and somebody brings that up, I think it's important that we understand what this committee have to consider and what level of weight we have to give to the draft plan strategy and what level of weight we give to the current extant development plan, Chair. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I think it's something that needs cleared up. People need to understand what it is that we're trying to deal with here in relation to how we make our decisions and why we make the decisions that we make. Thank you.
That's fair, thank you. John, Malachy, I'll bring you in now.
So in terms of the plan application, and particularly in this application, we've referred to the emerging plan in terms of the differences between that and PPS 15. Suppose when the direction order came out in January, and the closer we get to adoption of a plan, and you know the width that we can apply to the emerging LDP will change the closer we get to the direction order in May, June. So I mean, it is a material consideration at this point. Now the direction order is out in January 2019, but the width is a matter for the decision maker to apply in each individual case. And that's what.
John, is there anything you want to ask or confirm there again?
Okay, that's as clear as mud in some senses, Chair. I suppose my interpretation of that, and I'll stand to be corrected, is it's over to us again. And it's about the weight that we get, and perhaps some further clarity from the city solicitor would prove useful. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll bring Philip in and help assist this.
So members, just that this issue is specifically addressed in the case officer's report. And in members' packs that they have in relation to this, it is specifically addressed at pages 28 to 29. It's paragraph 11 of the case officer's report, where in the section headed the Derry City and Strabane District Council Local Development Plan, Draft Plan Strategy. And you'll see there's a detailed description of the position in relation to the position for the emerging plan as it currently stands. There was reference, members, to the Glebe Homes case, Lisburn City Castlereagh. That was a case in which LCCC had adopted a strategy whereby they were going to apply determining weight. The ratio of that particular case was that was a reasonable approach to adopt for the council. It's not the approach which has been adopted by any of the other councils in Northern Ireland, who have all, as is set out in the paragraph there, decided to apply a limited determining weight to their emerging plans until such time as they're fully adopted. And that would equally be a rational approach to be taken in relation to it. So.
Councillor Boyle, is something you want to come back on that one? Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I'm good, Chair. Chair, we've heard from both the objector and the applicant in relation to the flood risk, and I think it's well rehearsed within this council around the seriousness of the impact of flooding, and I think we're only too aware of the devastating impact that the flood events of 2017 had in the community of Eglinton, and no doubt the applicant is all too aware as well. Chair, you did mention that there was a representative from DFI Rivers on, and I know there was a comment made by the objector around the accuracy of the flood maps, and so could we maybe ask the representative from DFI Rivers around the accuracy of the flood information that's contained, flood maps that's contained within our report, and if at all possible, could the DFI Rivers representative, apologies if just his name's escaped me, Neil, could we ask around the flood alleviation plan at the eastern part of this site, the application site? Would this application impede any future flood alleviation plan? I know it might be a difficult question to answer at this stage. I know it's only feasibility, but it's it has been raised by the objectors. I think we all want to see the flood protections again, that they protect the residents of Eglinton against this something similar happening again. So if this application is going to impede that, I think we need to know. So if the DFI representative could shine a wee bit of light on both of those questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Neil, are you online there?
Yes, I'm online. I'm having difficulty unmuting my video. Yes, Chair. In terms of the accuracy of the flood maps, the latest mapping was published in February.
Neil, just a wee minute, Neil, if you don't mind, if you could speak a bit closer into your microphone and a bit slower. It's just a bit difficult to hear you. And just to confirm, you heard the two questions from Councillor Jackson, please.
Yes, so question one was with respect to accuracy of the maps, and question two was about the proposals for the flood alleviation scheme and how the proposed development impact on that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Neil. Everybody here, Neil, all right? Okay, go ahead.
The latest mapping was published in February 2025, and we are content that the maps are accurate as far as flood mapping goes. These are the most accurate you would get. I have no concerns about the accuracy of the mapping. The flood alleviation scheme, the preferred option, I don't know what the committee have in their packs, but Rivers Director responded on the 11th of October 2024, and at the end of that consultation response I included a map showing the preferred option. It would probably be helpful if you had that. If not, I have it here. I don't know if I'm allowed to display things, or if it's possible, but do the councillors have that map?
We'll try and see if we can get it here, but continue on and we'll see if we can find it somewhere.
Well, the proposed flood defence runs along the western boundary of the Ballygooden Road and then turns just to the south of the Church Hall and carries across the field behind to the north of where the proposed house would be, and then extends right to Main Street and comes back along the far side of the river, the western side of the river. The development would be in an area that is at the minute preferred as sacrificial floodplain, an area where we'd expect water to flood if the scheme was to be completed as per the preferred option.
Okay, Neil, if you can just hold it there, what we'll do is we'll try and get the map off the portal.
That's it there, yeah.
That's it there. So if you don't mind going back over that again now, it'd be easier.
Okay, so
the map in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, so the purple dashed line is the flood defence. So that would be a flood wall tying into high ground to its southern point on the Ballygooden Road, and then travelling on the western edge of the Ballygooden Road across the back of the development that's proposed on through the Main Street and then across the river and down the other side. A slight diversion of the river's planned as well to take it away from the houses on the right bank or the left bank. And so in a flood event, that area between the river and the flood defence, the river and the purple dashed line would be expected to flood. So if the development was there, that preferred option would have to be amended or revisited. I don't know how feasible it is to change it or how feasible it isn't to change it.
Councillor Jackson, go ahead there.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Neil, for that. I suppose the obvious question that this poses is if this land is part of the flood preferred option and it's described as sacrificial and designed to flood, then why are we sitting here in front of us with a recommendation to approve? I would have felt that if there's, well, to me looking at it, if we're approving a site in the middle of a field that is potentially going to flood at any flood event, it's designed to flood during a flood event, then why is DFI recommending or not strongly objecting to the approval? If there's any clarity on that, unless I'm missing something blatantly obvious.
Okay, we'll try and get an answer to your comment now. Okay, Malachy.
I think if we did take this on board and the case officer report, and I think it's alluded to in terms of where we're at, we have a plan application before us. We have to assess the plan application in the context of the plan and policy. We've consulted the DFA Rivers, who have not presented any refusal reasons in relation to their proposed works. They've acknowledged it, that it's investigative, it's potential, and it's a preferred option stage. We have considered that report, and given that the stage of design is at, we haven't given it significant width. Because acknowledged by Neil that this could be changed, is also let know, but based on the current design, that area would be needed. But there's nothing within the policy context either provided by DFA Rivers in terms of refusal reason or in the judgment of officers that would justify recommending refusal on the basis of something that may happen in the future.
Do you want to come back and answer there, Councillor Jackson?
I just want to point it out that if we approve this application in front of us, the preferred option for the flood alleviation scheme to protect the village of Eglinton will need to be amended, and that's I just would like a wee bit of clarity in relation to that, and I appreciate Malachy might be the person to ask it. So if and Neil may not be in a position to answer that question at the minute, but I just find it difficult to take a decision on this one based on the information that we've received today.
Neil, if you heard Councillor Jackson's comments here, would you be able to assist in the point that he brought up there, please?
Yeah, I have spoken to the people who are involved in the design, and all I can say is that is the preferred option, and that's what they've been looking at. I don't know if they're required to change that, what impact that would have. It's just an unknown. I'm sorry, I'm not involved in the scheme, and they're aware of this application. And I've informed them that, the potential of development going ahead here. But I can't really give Councillor Jackson an answer in the sense that, yes, there's another way to do it. I don't know if there is or if there isn't. In terms of presenting refusal reasons, statutory consultees advise in accordance with policy, and refusal reasons have to be grounded in policy. And I couldn't find anywhere in the policy where this, the potential for a flood alleviation scheme was included as a reason for not giving planning permission. But ultimately, this is a planning matter. If I've missed something in the policy, I'm sure the planning authority hasn't. I don't know if that helps, but it's as far as I can really go, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Neil, thank you for that. I want to bring in Councillor Gallagher at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. Just I'm going through it all, and officers putting it through the matter of policies. I think that officers have also come up with quite a number of mitigation factors that is built in to the conditions. That's attached to this, that I think that could alleviate any fears that some committee members may have. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Gallagher, bring in Suzanne now.
Thanks, Chair. Members, look, just to assist, if the wider flood alleviation scheme is a material consideration that you are concerned about or you want us to explore further, all the information what we have to date is what Malgi has said and what Neil has said as well. So on the basis of the information today, we're looking at the existing planning policy, the proposed planning policy, and the material consideration that Councillor Gallagher has confirmed there as well. So, I mean, just putting it out there, if it would assist you further, that we would explore that impact on the flood alleviation scheme for you as part of the application, officers most certainly can take this away and look at that again, if it would alleviate any of your concerns.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation that's in front of us.
Sir Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Suzanne, for that. And I appreciate where Councillor Gallagher's coming from. And I was reading the report, I was in a very similar position. And the applicant has demonstrated how there's the permeable driveways and things and the surfaces that have been put in place. They restrict the runoff, the greenfield runoff, and they minimise any flood impact on neighbouring properties. I fully appreciate that everything's been done in that regard. What is making it really difficult is the impact that this is having on the wider protections of the flood alleviation scheme for the village of Eglinton. And I am extremely uncomfortable for us taking a decision that could impede the protections, the future protections. And so I note that Councillor Gallagher's proposal hasn't received a seconder. I would be supportive of a deferral to allow that further information to be explored by officers, because what we don't want to do is take a decision now that results in the much needed protections of the village of Eglinton being unachievable. So if that requires a proposal, I am more than happy to propose that this application is deferred to seek further information in relation to the flood alleviation scheme.
Okay, members, I have two proposals. One with go with the recommendation, and I have one for deferral. I have no seconders for either, so if I can have a seconder. Councillor Fleming, Councillor Boyle, go ahead.
I'm happy to second Councillor Jackson's proposal.
Councillor Boyle.
Well, generally speaking, we take each one at a time, Chair. And the first one was Councillor Gallagher's.
Well, Chair.
However, I'm entirely sympathetic to Councillor Gallagher's view. I do see quite a significant amount of comfort in the 19 conditions that are on it. But I'm also very sympathetic to the idea that a deferral would prove equally valuable for this committee. So, Councillor Gallagher, I regret to say I won't be seconding yours. I think the appropriate thing for us to do as a committee is to give it some further consideration, in fairness to everyone, applicant and objectors. So if your party colleague hadn't have seconded it, Councillor Jackson, I certainly would have as well. So I'm supportive of that position. But can I just ask that we try and bring this back to us as quickly as we possibly can? Again, in the interests of all concerned. Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Gallagher.
Chair, just one thing, like Department there, Rivers, I don't think they're going to bring anything new to this party. They have turned around and said at this meeting that they put it through the policy and couldn't find nothing. So, we could defer this for a month, we can defer it for 2 months, we can defer it for 3, whatever. But I don't think in 3 months' time that anything is going to come back that we're not already aware of that's in front of us in order for us to be able to make a decision. So I think if there was, or if River Agency can give us any comfort that they're going to bring any new information, then defer it. But if they're sitting here at this meeting, there's nothing new to bring. Hi, where are we going?
Let's find out.
Chair, and I'm going to remind Councillor Gallagher's comments that he made at full council. I'm not asking Councillor Gallagher for an opinion. We're asking the people in the EFI that are involved in the flood alleviation the feedback. So that was the basis of our proposal, or my proposal, and we've heard. If we were asking Councillor Gallagher for his opinion, I would have asked him.
Okay, members, I have a proposal which is seconded, and that is to seek any further information directly if Rivers, to see if there's any further information. And I want to take a vote on that now at this stage, please. Yes, to go for further information. Yeah, funny.
Thanks, Chair. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For Suzanne.
Alderman Neri McMorris. Apologies. Alderman Janice Montgomery. For. Councillor John Boyd. Councillor Caroline Devine. Councillor Sean Fleming. Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Fergal Leonard. Councillor Patricia Logue. Or Councillor Sean Mooney. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley.
Or
Councillor Gracie Nealis. Okay. (11 for, 1 against, 1 abstention), and members' officers will draft a letter after the meeting today to be sent before the end of the week to the department, to the appropriate body in terms of the flood alleviation scheme.
okay, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, members, for your discussion on that one. We're going to move on now to number 3. This is Dergalt Road, Zuban, and Margie taking us through this one.
Thank you, Chair. The next item is L11 2024-090. It's an outline application for a proposed dwelling and garage located 60 metres southeast of 5 Dergalt Road, Strabane, and the officer recommendation is refuse. The application site is defined in red, and before you in the presentation is located south of 5 Dergalt Road. It rises away from the adjoining road level. The site is cut out of a larger agricultural field. To the north of the application site, there is an existing stream and belt of mature vegetation. There's at the southern side of the application site, there's an agricultural lane which runs along a former boundary of a field, and not shown in those photographs, but in some of the later photographs, there's currently a site under construction, just where my cursor is there now, beyond that agricultural lane. So in terms of the context, the application site is located beyond this container. This is the agricultural field, laneway referred in the report. The mature vegetation and stream is located there, and you may just see the roof of number 5 Dergalt Road there. And again, you can see these photographs taken in February where the construction of the existing property approved under a previous application. So this is travelling west along Dergalt Road past the entrance of 5 Dergalt Road. So the application site is located here where the cursor is. Again, you'll see that container up above where the property is under construction, and the mature vegetation and stream is located just beyond that car, where the car is parked there on the road. And again, it's just some other pictures that are contained within your pack as well, showing similar views in both directions towards the application site. So the policy context for the application is set out in the case officer report. It includes the RDS, the Strabane area plan, the draft land strategy, the SPPS, PPS2, PPS3, PPS 15 in relation to flooding, and PPS 21, which is the principal policy consideration in relation to the proposed development. And we've also considered supplementary planning guidance, building on tradition. So to assist us in this application, we've consulted a number of bodies, including DFI Roads, Environmental Health, NI Water, Water Management Unit, and Shared Environmental Services. No objections have been raised by any of the consultees, and Shared Environmental Service carried out an appropriate assessment and are satisfied that the proposal will not have any adverse effect on the integrity of any European site, provided mitigation conditions are complied with. So the application is an outline application for a dwelling. Policy CTI1 sets out the range of types of development. The submissions in support of this application sets out an assessment by the applicant that this is an unfull site. Therefore, officers have considered a proposal under policy CTY8 of PPS 21. So PPS CTY8 relates to urban development, which states that plan permission will be refused for a building which creates or adds to urban development, unless it's an exception as stated in CTY8. And an exception will be permitted for the development of a small gap site, sufficient only to accommodate up to a maximum of 2 houses within an otherwise substantial and continuously built up frontage, and provided it meets other aspects, including the existing pattern along the frontage in terms of size, scale, siding, and plot size. And for the purposes of this policy, the definition of substantial and built-up frontage includes a line of 3 or more buildings along a road frontage without accompanying development to the rear. So officers have looked at this case in a 3-step approach in terms of CTI8 and urban development. Firstly, they've asked, does the proposed development create the urban development? So we have looked at the application site in terms of the proposal, if allowed. To the northwest of the site, we have there's property numbers 5 Dergalt Road. There's the application site, and then there's the approved and currently under construction property to the south east of the application site. Given that it would result in a linear form of road frontage along this part of Dergalt Road, there will be a form of urban development. So officers then turn their mind to, is it a type of development that's an exception under CTI8, i.e. is it urban development that meets the exception test? So we firstly looked at, is this a substantial and continuously built up frontage? To do that, we looked at the pattern of development and the properties located along this part of Dergalt Road. So we, going from the northwest back, we looked at the site. To the northwest of the site, we have number 5 and an associated outbuildings, which are 2 buildings with a road frontage onto Dergalt Road. Then on the application, before you come to the red line of the application, we considered there was like a stream and mature vegetation, which is approximately 17 metres, which has a frontage on the Dergelt Road. Then we have the application site, which is 55 metres as a gap, which is the application site. Then we have a site under construction, which was granted under Reserve Matters application, which has a road frontage under with 58 metres. So considering those, we've taken into account, case law, and in particular, we've looked at the recent judicial review cases, and in particular the Glass Drummond Road case, which looked at the issue of substantially and continuously built up frontage. Within that, policy C2I8 refers to a small gap site within an otherwise substantial and continuously built up frontage. That is to say, a road frontage which is continuously built up, but for the gap which is under consideration. In that case, the development pattern had 3 buildings separated by 2 visual gaps, neither of which carried any buildings. Officers consider in this case that the development pattern in the judicial case has there's similarities in terms of assessing the gaps between the application site. So if we look at our application site, we considered this section of Dergelt Road does not have a substantial and continuously built up frontage, as the 3 buildings, which are the 2 at 5 Dergelt Road and the 1 under construction, are separated by 2 gaps, two gap sites with no buildings. These considered easily to be the site and the dense wedge bridge stream, which is a 15-metre gap as well. And as such, it cannot be demonstrated that there's a continuous line of development at this location. And therefore, this part of the policy exception cannot be complied with. We've also considered whether this is a small gap site. Whilst the submitted site layout appears to demonstrate that the site is capable of accommodating a dwelling with a similar plot size and frontage length as the existing dwellings at 5 Dergelt Road and the building under construction, it is considered the application site does also provide a visual break between these 2 sites. The appreciation of the gap is further exacerbated by the dense vegetated wedge at the bridge stream, which is set about as considered a gap in its own right. Therefore, it's not considered by officers that there is a small gap site within a substantial and continuously built up frontage. It is considered that the loss of this visual break through the introduction of a proposed dwelling would create a urban development and therefore result in a material change in the character and appearance of the locality and would harm the rural character of the area and therefore be contrary to C2I8 and C2I14. We have considered whether a dwelling would integrate in terms of design, although this is at outline stage. A conceptual site plan has been provided, and we've looked at the topography of the site and the locality of it, and it's considered that there is some backdrop provided by the existing mature wedge, and it's considered that a modest scale dwelling could be integrated on this site. We've considered amenity, given the relationship between the site and adjacent sites and separation distance. We do not believe that there will be any issues in terms of residential amenity. The site will provide adequate levels of private amenity space. There's no objections raised by environmental health in terms of noise or odour, etc. And therefore it's considered in terms of amenity that the proposal complies with the SPPS. PPS free has been considered, DFI roads have been consulted, and if it's set out in the report, they require visibility displays of 2.4 by 55, and these are achievable, and officers are satisfied that the proposal complies with PPS free. In terms of PPS2 natural heritage, the application site is not within any protected areas. Nor was there any evidence of ecological features within the site that ought to be protected or considered. There's no remnants of previous buildings nor mature trees within the red line of the application site. We have considered that there is a watercourse, as referred to earlier in the presentation and the report, which extends along the western boundary, and it is connected to the Riverfoyle properties ASAC, and we have carried an appropriate assessment and provided that a 10-metre buffer strip from the watercourse is applied, and those conditions are applied. We don't believe there will be any issues in terms of affecting the Riverfoyle and tributaries SAC. In terms of the vegetation at the front, a condition could be applied to replant any hedgerow that's removed as a result of the application. The proposal has also been assessed against NH6, which relates to areas of outstanding natural beauty, and it's considered a modest dwelling restricted to a modest ridge height condition would have no harm on the overall character of the AOMB. There's no areas of flood risk identified within the site, and it doesn't reach any threshold to require a drainage assessment. And we have received a number of lead items. These include 3 letters of support from local elected representatives, and a number of photographs, some of which have been annotated, have been submitted by the agent. Officers have viewed all these lead items and considered these lead items and have no changes to make to our recommendation. So having considered all material considerations, including the development plan, relevant policies, relevant history, and consultations, refusal is recommended on the grounds that that does not meet any of the outlined cases within CTY 1. It does not comply with the exceptional test set out in CTY 8, and that the site does not have a substantial and intentionally built up frontage, and the site is not considered a small gap site. And we believe if development is allowed on this site, it would create a urban development and suburban style of build up that would be detrimental to the rural character of this area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malky. We have Declan Devine online as the agent. Declan, can you hear me there?
Thank you, Chair.
Declan, if you can come in, post your mic, and you have 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll give you a shout about 4.5 minutes and I'll ask you to wrap up at that stage. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Chair members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the current application. This case turns on the correct application of policy CTY 8 PPS 21, which allows for an infill dwelling within a substantial and continuously built up frontage. Policy defines a built up frontage as a line of 3 or more buildings along a road frontage. Importantly, it does not require 3 dwellings, and this has been confirmed in several Plan Appeal Commission decisions. For instance, PAC Appeal 2011/A0277, Commission noted the requirements of the policy will be met where there is a line of 3 buildings along a road frontage and where the existing development pattern is respected, whether or not the existing development represents urban development. The interpretation is supported by W. Orbison case C and his planning appeal principles, where he describes CTY 8 as opaque and perplexing and confirms that visual and physical relationship is the key consideration. On the Deergelt Road to the northwest, there's photos annotated earlier today. Just want to pull them up myself when I'm viewing them. Sorry, guys. So from the northwest of the site, we have an established dwelling and garage outbuildings at number 5. So it is, you can see in one of the photographs is annotated. When you view this from the Deergelt Road, looking across the hedgerows, you can see the garage rooftops, the house itself, our application site, and the new site currently under construction. Since those photos were just taken towards the weekend, the garage itself was also under construction at up sub-floor level. The southeast of the site, with the dwelling that's under construction, that was approved in LA 11/2023 1859 RM, is now at almost roof complete level. And then there's the dwelling opposite the site, further supports continuity of the built form. The photographic evidence that we have alongside this statement clearly shows that these buildings are visually read together when travelling either direction on the Deergelt Road. The photos taken from the site and its approach demonstrate that you're visually upon the older dwelling and new construction and the proposed site within a very short field of view. This further enhanced whenever you go to the Avish Road and you look across, it is read as one continuous built development, so it is, and everything's interlinked. The planning officer's reliance on a vegetated wedge and a stream separating elements is respectively an overstatement. These features do not prevent visual linkage of built form from the road as confirmed in the photographs. Furthermore, the applicant has signed an agreement with NIE to remove the trees in question within a 20-metre buffer either side of the power lines. This agreement only came to light on Friday. The agreement was signed on Thursday, as shown, and we have that detailed on the plan that was submitted this morning. This will enhance under visibility and further tie the proposal into the site and into the built context without harming the rural character due to limited visibility beyond 100 metres in either direction of the site. In terms of policy CTY 14, the refusal reasons claim that ribbon development would result, but CTY 8 is specifically designed to manage such cases by allowing an infill and structured and policy-led way. As CTY 8 is satisfied, CTY 14 should not be separately engaged in a prohibitive way. The proposal also meets policy CTY 13 on integration. It reflects the existing scale, siting and plot width of the adjoining buildings. The proposed landscaping, including native hedgerow planting and oak, alder and mountain ash trees, will further aid in blending the development into the surroundings. Lastly, I want to highlight that this application is consistent with several past approvals, including LA 11 2019-0607/O at Sleeboy Road, B 2013-0184/F at Four Glen Road, Dungiven, and E 2012-0058/O at Drumnavully Park, Ballycastle. These permissions were granted under similar circumstances by Orbis and KC. Observes the planning authority must make planning decisions in a consistent way. It is unlikely to disregard two or more inconsistent decisions if they cannot be distinguished. In conclusion, the photographic, mapping and policy evidence clearly demonstrate that the proposal is within a substantial and continuously built up frontage. The visual linkage between buildings is clear and will be further enhanced by NIE's vegetation removal. The proposal integrates well and respects rural character, and most importantly, the application is policy compliant under CTY 8, CTY 14.
Can I ask you to wrap up there now, Declan, please?
CTY 14. I respectfully ask the committee to overturn the refusal and grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Declan. Members, has anybody any questions for Declan? Is anybody online any questions for Declan? No questions indicated there, Declan, so thanks very much for attending the plan committee today.
Thank you.
Members, has anybody got any questions for Malachy? Anybody online any questions for Malachy? Question for Malachy? Question for Malachy there?
Just regarding that new information that came in around the visual break that's in the property. I know you did say you give it some consideration, but does that have any bearing on the fact that it may, if that visual break was removed and there was a connection and there was visibility, that make an impact on the infill element? Go ahead.
Through the chair, yeah. I suppose in answer to that question, there's two elements to the importance of the wedge or the stream, so the wedge of the mature vegetation. One part of our recommendation is based on what we consider that a gap, within the road frontage. So as I say, factually, you can't have a continuously built up frontage if you have a building, the application site, a gap, then the next building, or whichever order that's in. So that is one important element of why we consider that that wedge they bear some weight in our recommendation. And probably in the sense of whether the trees are there or not is a material just off a gap. There's still a stream, a bridge, and it's not within the application site. So it's a separate site before you get to 5 Derrygalt Road. So in terms of the visual break, we do believe that the application site itself is the visual break. It's not the actual the wedge of trees. It's the application site provides a visual relief in terms of the context of that site. We don't think there's a character of built up frontage and at that area. So we're giving width to the actual site itself, being the visual break that ought to be protected in this particular case.
That answer your query there, Councillor Gallagher. Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Sorry, Chair, I don't have a question, so just in case anybody else has any questions before I go ahead.
Right, I just want to check there's no more questions. Anybody, any questions for Malachy online? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at the circumstances for this case, I think that this case is different. That the PAC ruling on the Glassdrum Road has been referenced in the report, and I think this is a different scenario. So I believe it should be considered on its own facts and whether this is a gap site or not. I do believe that it is a substantial and continuous built-up frontage. I think the trees in the bridge, I know we've talked about the trees being removed. I think that doesn't represent a substantially sized visual gap along that frontage. There are 3 buildings there, 2 at number 5 and the one that's under construction. So my view is that that would be a substantial and continuous built up frontage and that there is a gap in that site. I also think even whether that's accepted or not, in terms of the Strabane area plan, under 123.2.1, we can apply a less restrictive policy on this. So my view is that there is a gap site, so that there's an exception. And I think that the proposal does respect the existing development pattern in terms of size, scale, siting and the plot size. So I would be of the mind to propose that we overturn the refusal proposal and that we accept this application under the conditions that it does meet CTY 8. And because of that, then the other 2 refusal reasons are invalidated.
Can I have a seconder for that proposal, please? Councillor Logue. Okay, members, we have a proposal and a seconder here to overturn the officer's decision. I'm going to go to a vote on this, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Nuri McMorris is not here. Alderman Janice Montgomery. 4. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Caroline Devine. Councillor Sean Fleming. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
4.
Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Fergal Leonard. Councillor Patricia Logue. 4. Councillor Sean Mooney. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley. Councillor Gracie Nealis. It's 11-4, 1 abstention to overturn LA 11 2024-0490.
Okay, thank you. I'll get a member for that there. We're moving on to number 4. And this is 124 and 126 Arlock Road. Malachy's doing this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. It's the next application is L11 2023-1969. It's an outline application. It's proposed site for dwelling at a site adjacent to numbers 124 and 126 Ardlock Road, Maydown, and the officer recommendation is to refuse. The application site is located outside any development limits as defined in the Derry Area Plan, and is located within the open countryside. Just for context, in terms of the application site in red here, it's on the Ardlock Road as you over the bridge, known as the Maboy Bridge at the Fahan, as it approaches the dual carriageway at the A2, just outside the development limits of Maydown settlement as identified in the Derry Area Plan. I don't know if you see that, but there's a yellow line showing where it is in terms of its proximity to the settlement of Maydown in accordance with the Derry Area Plan. So the application site is a small rectangular agricultural field. It's located on the western side of the Ardlock Road. It says close to the settlement of Maydown. The site boundaries are composed of open ranch style fences at a roadside boundary, and there's some interspersed low level vegetation along the northern boundary. The southern boundary is comprised of interspersed mature trees with heights of approximately 6 metres. The western site boundary is comprised of low level post and wire fence. And nearby the site, we have a neighbouring property known as number 128, which is located immediately to the rear of the application site, which is in the site that's 126 here, and 124 immediately to the north, whilst an existing private access abuts the southern boundary serving 126. And again, we have the A6 dual carriageway and settlement of Maydown to the north and northwest of the site. So that's some photographs showing the context. That's the front of the site where the site boundary is. And again, looking back towards the site from the A2 dual carriageway. And again, looking from the A2 dual carriageway coming from Maydown. So the policy context is set out within the case officer report, which includes the RDS, the Derry Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS2 Natural Heritage, PPS Free Access Movement and Parking, PPS 16, sorry, CTY 16 within PPS 21, PPS 21, and the Derry Area Plan, sorry, the Local Development Plan, Draft Plan Strategy 2032, and the Supplementary Planning Guidance, Building on Tradition. During the plan application, there was no letters of objection. At the stage of putting the report to committee, there were no letters of support, but I'll allude to later on in the presentation that we have received one letter of support in the application. In terms of consultees, we consulted NA Water, Environmental Health, DFA Roads, Water Management, and Shared Environmental Services. None of the consultees have any issues subject to conditions, and Shared Environmental Service have advised that there will be no adverse effect on the integrity of the nearby European site, the River Fahan, subject to appropriate mitigation measures being conditioned in any approval. So the application site was considered under a number of policies on terms of CTI1, in terms of the types of development where a single dwelling will be allowed in the countryside. So officers have looked at two policies in particular in the report, and they're detailed and set out in relation to CTY 2A, which deals with new dwellings and existing clusters. So as the report goes through each of these, the policy requirement of CTY 2A is that all criteria must be met to allow for approval. So the cluster of development, we've considered whether the cluster of development lies outside of a farm and consists of 4 or more buildings, excluding ancillary buildings, of which least are 3 buildings. So officers consider that the first criterion is not met, as there's no defined cluster can be established at the location. It's considered the application site clusters with 3 buildings, which are circled in yellow, which are on 126, 122, and 124. However, there's no other buildings within this visual cluster. We do not consider that the buildings within Maydown can be applied or within the settlement limits and not within the countryside. And furthermore, we do not believe that there is a significant visual linkage between them. They consider them a visual cluster or an existing cluster, considering you have a dual carriageway separating the sites, the applications and Maydown Village. Again, the next part criteria from CTY 2A is whether the cluster appears as a visual entity in the local landscape. Officers have considered this and looked at views along Clooney Road, Arlock Road and various junctions and looking towards the site and do not have concluded that does not appear as a visual entity in the local landscape. So they believe the second criteria is not met. We have considered whether the cluster is associated with a focal point, such as a social community building facility or is located across roads. Officers are satisfied that the junction from Ardlock Road onto the Maydown A2 cross dual carriageway could be considered a crossroads location, and therefore we believe that criteria has been met. We believe that the criteria 4 has also been met because the site does have a suitable degree of enclosure and is bounded on at least 2 sides with all our development. And we also believe that the criteria 5 is met because it can be absorbed in the existing cluster without significantly altering the character or visually intruding into the open countryside. And we also believe that the 6th criteria can be met because the proposal would not adversely impact on residential amenity given the relationship between the application site and the adjacent properties. So just reiterating CTY 2A and the policy requirement that all the following criteria are met. Officers have laid out the reports, having considered all 6 bullet points within CTY 2A, that bullet points 1 and 2, in our opinion, has not been met. We've also considered whether CTY 8 urban development could be applied in relation to this application site. There's a number of issues in our opinion in terms of meeting the criterion for CTY 8 urban development. We believe that if we just take it back to the site location, sorry for context, we believe that a ribbon of development won't be created because there's no site to the south. So you've got a building here front on the Arlock Road, here on the Arlock Road, then you have a site and you have nothing to the south of it then. We do not consider that the building to the rear, 126, has a road frontage and therefore cannot be considered as part of a contingency build-up frontage because it does not front onto our Lock Road. It's separate by the site. So we don't think that the context and criteria for a contingency built-up frontage exists on the ground, and therefore CTY 8 can't be applied in officer's opinion in reference to this application site. We've considered 13 and 14, and we acknowledge that in terms of CTY 13 that a dwelling that could be developed in the site because as it's suitably enclosed and it wouldn't be unduly prominent given its locality. And however, we don't feel that CTY 14 can be complied with because if a dwelling was approved in this site, it would result in urban development by adding a third property onto the frontage on the Arlock Road. Therefore, we believe that none of the exceptions within CTY 1 have been met, and therefore we believe that the proposal is contrary to CTY 1 of PPS 21. We've considered CTY 16 and foul sewage will be disposed of by treatment plants and soakaways. We've consulted Environmental Health, NI Water Management and SES, subject to conditions and compliance with all our consents. The proposal would satisfy CTY 16. In terms of PPS free, we're content that an access can be provided without adverse impact. In terms of PPS 2, we're content that there will be no adverse impact on any features inside or outside the site. And in terms of the plan strategy, we have considered the current written and wouldn't justify any different recommendation than that being made from our case officer report. We've considered the supporting statements submitted by the applicant in relation to CTY 2A and CTY 8, and they've been weighted in the recommendation. In terms of a lit item, it's been acknowledged a letter of support has been submitted by elected representative. It has been viewed and considered by officers. However, there's no change in our recommendation as a result of this lit item. So in summary, the officers are recommend refusal on the grounds that we believe that the proposal fails to meet criteria 1 and 2 of policy CTY 2A of PPS 21. And also CTY 8 and CTY 14 of PPS 21, and then in the round there's been no, it's not been demonstrated that there's a case to justify why this development is essential in this rural location in accordance with the requirements of CTY 1 of PPS 21, and taking into account all the material considerations, including consultees and the submissions by the applicant. Refusal is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Malachy. We have Mr. Alan Boyle with us here today, and I'd like you to come forward, Alan, as the agent. Hello, Alan, you're welcome to the chamber here today. So you have 5 minutes to address the committee, and about 4.5 minutes, I'll give you a shout to ask you to wrap up at that stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, the committee, for the opportunity to address you today. This site is for Mr. McLaughlin. The site belongs to his wife. It's their family land, and he would like to build his own house in this area. We believe an approval can be granted under CTY 2A and CTY 8 in full. There really exists at this the strong Maydown settlement, which we believe that we read with. We take Malachy's point that we're outside the development limit, but when viewed from the photographic survey we have submitted, our site reads visually with the Maydown grouping from all views. If we ignore the overall Maydown settlement, we have 4 more buildings, 3 of which are dwellings. So we believe if we work in the cluster from that side of things as well. CTY 8 allows for up to two dwellings on a gap site of a substantially built up frontage of similar size and scale. We believe that to the west of the site, the driveway of 126 Ardlock Road frames the built up frontage, and to the east there is number 124 and 122 Ardlock Road. The critical view of the site is from the Ardlock Road and the approach from Eglinton Village. We believe that there is a focal point. I think Malachy has addressed that, in that there's the convoluted crossroads. There's actually, I think, 6 junctions at this area. There's the local meeting point at the Mowboy Bridge where fishermen and golfers meet. The site is enclosed by existing dwellings with a driveway of 126 to the south. The site is absorbed within the cluster. It's compacted within the group. It does not extend beyond the established group, and as such does not alter the group. There are more than 4 buildings, 3 of which are dwellings. The cluster is a visual entity. Just beyond the site, we have the car sales, the shop, we have the primary school, some of which are within Maydown, some of which are outside the Maydown settlement limits. There's no adverse effect to residential amenity. The site is well served with public transport. It's close to local shops, schools, etc. By allowing the site, we improve visibility for all roads. We improve visibility for all road users and for the existing neighbours. We've submitted 25 plus precedent cases, 9 of which are almost identical to this case, one of which is in Campsie, approximately a mile away, 6 of which are in Broadbridge, which is about 2.5 miles away. Our photographic survey clearly shows that there is clustering from our site, not only to the 3 houses in the immediate, but also with the overall maydown. I can read out a list of the precedent cases, but we've already submitted those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. So members, has anybody in the chamber any questions for Alan, please? Is there anybody online who has any questions for Alan? Oh, Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, and I know you sort of touched that up, but it annoys in the CTY2A of PPS 21. The first bullet point, can you just elaborate a wee bit more? Around why you feel that it meets all the criteria set out in CTY2A?
Thank you, Councillor. From our opinion, there's more than 4 buildings, 3 of which are dwellings. There is the focal point. In fact, there's more than one focal point. There's the Mowboy Bridge, there's a staggered crossroads, and that's even without going to the maydown, to which we actually visually link with. If we were allowed to bring maydown onto it, we have the whole maydown settlement. We're outside the red line, or the black line on the development boundary, but from our photographic survey we submitted, there's no view either approaching from Derry on the Ardlock Road or approaching from the Limavady direction, which our site can't be read with the maydown settlement.
Go ahead.
No, cheers, Chair. I just wanted the clarity around the 4 or more buildings. But I get that there's 3 dwellings, but there's more than 4 buildings. So no, I get that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Is there anybody else or online has any questions for Alan, please? I just want to bring in Suzanne at this stage.
Members, just for clarity, just listening to the agent's presentation and the question, just to refer you to the first point in the consideration of the clustering. So the officers obviously clearly visited the site, and the facts are that there are 3 buildings existing. A 4th building is located some 150 metres to southwest and does not cluster. So that is the assessment. So the starting point here from an officer position is that there's no existing cluster. And I would, I don't consider extending the consideration to Maydown to be a reasonable assessment to be considered at this stage. And it's obviously not something that officers have considered in the report.
Thank you, Alan. You're free to go. So is there any further questions or comments for Malachy? Councillor Boyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And the conclusion recommendation and the final sentence, Malachy, you refer to relevant planning history, including PAC decisions, which I'm guessing then, I'm not guessing, I'm assuming that you have taken into consider PAC decisions. What PAC decisions are we actually talking about, and how relevant would they be in consideration of this application?
Thank you. Go ahead, Malachy.
Sorry, I suppose Councillor Boyle refer you to page 108 in the pack, and there was a number of appeal references submitted in support of the application by the applicant. And the summary at the end, officers have considered those and considered those submissions, but have not arrived at a different recommendation as a result of that. And I believe that that's what the case officers are referring to in that summary conclusion, paragraph 13, page 110.
Yeah, that's page 108, is it? Probably mine's.
Yeah, the appeal references are mentioned at page 108, but
Oh, aye.
the summary at the end is referring to, and page 110 is referring back to page 108.
All right, right. Go ahead, John. Answer a minute.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to refer back to the previous remarks by Suzanne there, when she says it wasn't reasonable to take into consideration NADA. And I was just wondering, could you just elaborate a bit more on why it wouldn't be reasonable to stay? I know, because I'm really asking because the agent made the representation, and just I want to be a bit more information as to why it wouldn't be reasonable to take that into consideration. Thank you.
So, I mean, the application is made under the clustering policy, and the whole purpose is that you have an existing clustering and other dwellings, not going to change that. You know, if we're, as officers, we're not interpreting that to go further or wider to the extent of Maida, and otherwise we're going to have a large area of land that we're going to be potentially looking at lots of other development opportunities. I don't think that would be a reasonable consideration for officers to take forward as part of the report.
Mr. Boyd, do you want to go back in there, John? Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody got any questions online from Aki? No further question. Okay, members, the recommendation in front of you is to refuse this particular application. So I'll hand it over to yourself if you've anything else you want to add or comments to make. Councillor Minnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm listening to the application. I've listened to the presentation by Alan, the officer, and by the agent on behalf of the applicant. Questions were asked, and I just can't make any headway into actually trying to make a recommendation overturn. So on that basis, Chair, I'm happy to propose the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think as a proposer to accept the officer's recommendation, refuse, yeah. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Boyle.
Chair, just to explain again, I'm coming at it from the same position as Councillor Mooney. I'm always loath to, not or to turn people down and all of that, but I just can't see any way around what's a very strong report. So, yeah. There's one thing, and I will remark on it actually, and when it's a disappointment more than anything, but it's in relation to applications that we have in front of us that can tie into water mains. There's a lot of, and sewage removal and stuff like that. A lot of debate about, that we can't build because there's the infrastructure's not there. But in this case, there is an infrastructure there, but there are other reasons for overturning it. That's a frustration. But I'll second Councillor Mooney's proposal.
Okay, members, just go to vote on this, or are we? We'll just go to vote on. Thank you.
Okay, members, this is to accept the officer recommendation for LA 11 2023 19690. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Or Suzanne.
Alderman McMorris is not here. Alderman Janice Montgomery. Staying. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Caroline Devine. Councillor Sean Fleming.
Yeah.
Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Fergal Leonard.
No.
Councillor Patricia Logue.
Or
Councillor Sean Mooney. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley. Councillor Gracie Nealis. It's 12-4 and 1 abstention.
okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your discussion on that. So we're accepting the officer's recommendation. Listen, it's nearly 4:20, so I'm going to propose that we take a comfort break at this stage. I'm going to stop for 15 minutes, but I would ask you to take that reading time with regards late information we received for items number 9 and number 10 on the agenda. That's okay. Thank you. Okay, members, we're just going to move on now to application number 5. And this is at Corley Hill Road in Strabane. And James is taking us through this one. James, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. Item 5 is LA 11 2024-0807 S54, and it is a variation of conditions 6, 7, 10, and 40 of planning reference LA 11 2023-1249 F, which was an approval for 78 residential units, and that was located at the Convent Grammar School off Curly Hill Road in Strabane. The essential purpose of amending the conditions is to remove a slide element from the landscape drawings. And to remove that element, we have to update the planning conditions and the drawings that are associated with it. That's the site you can see there on the overhead, which is the old Convent Grammar School. And that's the red line associated with this application. The proposal is essentially, if you can see the purple slide in the middle of the drawing up there, and it's essentially to take that out. So that would affect 4 conditions, sorry. Condition 6, the original text is the one at the top, and then the amendments are highlighted in red below. And essentially this is a trigger point condition that by the 38th unit approved public open space, landscape planting, play equipment, and the slip and slide would have been installed. Obviously, that would have to be amended to remove the slide and to change part of the viewing platform and the landscaping. Condition 7 would be a planting condition. And again, for the same purposes, we would amend and change the plans that have been referred to. Condition 10 would be the boundary treatment plan. As part of the removal of the slide, there's a viewing platform there, and that would have had a gap, and that's to fill in with ratings just to make it safe. And that would be part of condition 10. And then the final condition, condition 40, is essentially the condition that ties in all the approved drawing numbers, and we would remove those drawing numbers that apply to the previous landscape plan and substitute it with the new one if you're mindful to approve. This would be the proposed site layout with the slide removed and ratings reinstated along the viewing platform, and just showing a grassed area where the slide would have been. And that would be the proposed block plan for the entirety of the site then. So the dwellings that are approved are not affected by this. The road layout is not affected by it, and the vast majority of the open space wouldn't be affected. There's also TPO trees on site, which again wouldn't be affected by this application. During the application, we received 5 representations, 2 of which were in your late items pack. Essentially, there were queries just over the height of the viewing platform, which was pre-agreed as part of the original application and won't be changing. There was a question over drilling, and would this require more drilling on site? And this, it wouldn't. Obviously, this is just a removal of elements. And as I said before, it doesn't affect the housing, which would be where the vast majority of the drilling or piling or foundations would be located. The height of the enhanced boundaries, they would remain at the 900 and 1100 millimetre rating heights, which were approved as part of the original. And then there was just a request just to explain what's happening more on the site. I contacted the person in question and just advised them then of what the application, what the aims and what they're intending to do. And they also had a query over opening hours, or sorry, not hours, construction hours. And I was able to provide them just with information to clarify that. The application, we consulted with DFI Roads, but as it didn't affect any of the adopted roads and doesn't require any further adopted plans to be submitted, they were content. So therefore, officers are satisfied that amending the wording of the 4 conditions is acceptable and adequate provision is made for public and private open space and landscaped areas as an integral part of the development. Officers therefore recommend that the variation of conditions 6, 7, 10 and 40 are approved. And just to advise members, as this is a section 54 application, very conditions, we will then be repeating all the other conditions that were on the original approval as they would be still applicable. And we've just included a full list of them on your full committee application. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for that. We have Gemma Joblin online. Are you there, Gemma?
I am, yes, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can hear you all right, Gemma. Gemma, you have 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll give you a shout about 4.5 minutes and ask you to wrap up around that stage. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair and members, for the opportunity to speak today. I don't propose to take up too much of your time. Simply, I'm here to ask you to support the officer's recommendation and approve this variation. As James has set out, this is a modest amendment. It concerns a small specific part of the landscape plan, simply to remove a previously approved landscape feature, which was an innovative slide linking the upper and lower parts of the site. And while this was an imaginative element that appeared promising on paper, the reality is that it cannot be delivered. Despite considerable effort by the applicant to retain it, I'm afraid the Housing Association has confirmed that due to insurance and long-term management and health and safety challenges, they can't continue with its installation. However, and importantly, this change doesn't compromise the wider landscape strategy. All pedestrian connections do remain fully intact, and moreover, the current proposal includes enhancements that will continue to deliver the high-quality public space. The viewing platform will be retained and the boundary treatments improved. It'll provide a valuable amenity offering expansive views and a welcome place for residents. More broadly, the scheme, as approved already, will deliver a generous and diverse open spaces, from woodland walks to play spaces and wildflower grassland. These features remain unchanged and will continue to offer a rich layered landscape experience for the community. So in conclusion, members, this amendment is both pragmatic and carefully considered. It responds to practical delivery constraints while retaining the spirit and ambition of the original vision. So I thank you for your time and respectfully ask you to endorse the officer's recommendation and approve this variation, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. Has any members any questions for Gemma, please? Or is anybody online has any questions? There's nobody indicating there, Gemma, so thanks very much for attending the day. Members, any questions for James on this? Anybody online? Okay, members, there in front of you, number 5 is recommendation is to approve the amendment of 4 conditions there. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Happy to propose the recommendation. Thank you.
Have a seconder, please. Alderman Montgomery, thank you. Can I say, we've got unanimous support for this one? Everybody online content enough with this? Okay, thank you, everyone. We're moving on now to agenda item 8. This is consultation from Donegal County Council. And Isabel is going to take us through this. Thank you, Isabel.
Good afternoon, members. This paper is to advise members of a formal notification letter received from Donegal County Council, which advises of a non-statutory pre-draft consultation exercise in relation to a proposed variation of the Donegal County Council Development Plan 2024 to 2030. An accompanying issues and options paper was also received, and both are appended to the committee report. The Council is a prescribed authority in relation to Donegal Council, and as such, comments are invited on the proposed variation. The deadline was actually the Friday, the 7th of March, but due to the dates for our planning committees, a holding response had to be issued on the 4th, advising that you would consider it at the planning committee on this date. And the response would then follow. The draft response letter is attached at Appendix 3 for your agreement or amendment. So the substantive proposal is a variation to the plan in respect of several new towns. Closest to ourselves would be Bridgend, and that's the one that the paper focuses on, as that is the one that is sufficiently proximate to have impacts on our own district. There is also, it's proposed to amend residential zonings in Buncrana from phase 2 to phase 1, and to amend land use zoning, excuse me, as a result of the residential zoned land tax, neither of which would have a particular impact on our district or particularly relevant. You'll see in your packs that there are a number of key issues that have been listed in relation to housing, town centre regeneration, etc. As they're all listed there, I won't go through each of them individually, but again, if you have questions at the end of any particular point, do feel free to ask. They all either align with or support our own strategic direction in terms of environmental matters, transport matters, housing, and such. Examples include, for example, refurbishing and reusing vacant and derelict properties and developing brownfield sites to provide new residential accommodation. And exploring opportunities in town centre regeneration to enhance the public realm and redirect traffic flows. Given that Bridgend is a strategic gateway town to our district, obviously anything that improves that, enhances it, and attracts investment will have a positive impact for ourselves. We would also have information on the transport and sustainability. The preserving the proposed N13 Bridgend to county boundary bypass route, taking it right up to the boundary, obviously with ourselves. The economic development and the opportunity sites, it's proposed they're looking to capitalise and safeguard Bridgend's strategic border location as a gateway to the northwest region. Realise its potential as a strategic cross-border location by facilitating new economic development at key accessible opportunity sites. In terms of recreation and natural heritage, we want to maximise Bridgend's potential for key tourism as a key tourism location, which again has mutual benefits for our district. So the most salient points that were noted, and you'll see this listed in the draft letter, are that while we note that the population of Bridgend is 373 and being the smallest of the local towns, it is strategically important to the settlement as a gateway to both our districts in terms of visual and other interactions and interdependencies. As we know, it immediately adjoins the boundary of Derry City at Ely Business Park. And the existing town plan boundary goes right up to the boundary with the north. The importance of achieving a coordinated high standard of design and appearance along the Bridgend to Buncrana Road and Skeg Roundabout corridor as a key gateway city arrival point is acknowledged and supported. And the consideration of the Skeg River, which flows from the western part of Derry to Lough Swilly, in terms of being an environmentally sensitive river corridor. Excuse me, we have also reinforced our support for that in our response letter. And again, that would align with our own actions and strategic direction. So in terms of the response itself, it will have set out these particular overarching issues and simply reinforces comments that we have made in the past. If there's anything further that you would like to ask, or if there's anything you would like amended in the draft, please feel free to highlight that now, and obviously that will be incorporated where possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Okay, members, have everyone happy enough to note the contents of that, or has anybody any suggestions as to what else they'd like to put in that letter? Happy enough, happy enough. Everybody happy enough online? Yeah, so, yeah, thank you for that. We'll move on to agenda item 9, operation of the delegated scheme, and Philip will take us through this.
Yeah, thank you, members. Long-running matter, this, members. You'll recall that in the May 2024 Planning Committee, you were advised that an application had been identified that was dealt with under delegated authority. This application should have fallen within the category, and did fall within the category of major development, and as such it should have been brought to committee. You were provided with a further update on the matter at the Planning Committee on the 8th of January 2025 and were advised that officers had concluded that all matters had been considered and no further action was required, and you were briefed with a copy of the case officer's report. You'll recall, members, that on the day of the committee, additional correspondence was received from the complainant, and that's been briefed at Appendix 10. Additional correspondence was subsequently received by elected members on the 27th of January, and that's briefed at Appendix 11. And further correspondence was received by officers on the 28th of January 2025, and that is briefed at Appendix 12. Further correspondence, indeed, members, was received yesterday, and that's been provided to members as late items. The position, members, is that the further paper then was felt that it was needed to be brought to members today, just to provide you with that correspondence formally, and to indicate to officers that, to members that in the position of officers, the position had not changed. 2 points specifically highlight in relation to the correspondence that was presented to you as late items. Paragraph number 6 says Riverfront Anglers would ask that the Planning Committee presses officers to address the outstanding matters in order that a complaint of maladministration can be formally resubmitted to NIPSO without further delay. So members, we're keen to see an end to this matter. I could suggest that in light of yesterday's correspondence, we'll bring a further report to you, but members, that would just seem to further delay matters and drag this on further and further. So just to assure you that we are content that all relevant information has been provided to members. And also, members, just in relation to paragraph 11, which states that the point is not whether planners would have presented the same recommendation to approve, rather it is whether members would have accepted that recommendation in the absence of environmental information, which is said to be meeting. Members, that's not the question that's before you. The issue in relation to this is fully accepted that this matter should have been brought to committee, and it wasn't, and therefore you didn't have the opportunity to consider the recommendation that was brought forward, and that's an error. And a mistake, and that we put our hands up to that. The question now would be whether or not it was deemed something whereby the members would wish to consider revocation or modification of the Planning Committee planning application that has been granted, given the presumption of regularity, and there's nothing to suggest at this stage that that would be the case. Consequently, members, this is all presented to you purely for information at this stage. I can say that if we conclude this matter today, on that basis, then further correspondence will be issued to Mr. Blackwood and to River Fawn Anglers outlining of the position, and he's then more than welcome to take the matter forward to the Public Service Ombudsman. As I say, members, it's fully accepted that an error was made in this case, and so there will be no issue in that regard so far as a complaint to the Ombudsman is concerned.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Does anybody want to come in on that or make any comments on it? Councillor Boyle, first of all.
Well, I'm duly noted, Philip, and thank you very much. And just again to reiterate, I can do this in the context of this paper. The SDLP outlined our position previously in relation to this, and we want to draw a line under this, and we feel that it is appropriate to draw a line under this, and for everyone to be afforded the opportunity to move on and get on with their jobs. With the due diligence that we all expect, and we're entirely understanding of the fact that we're all only human. People there are human errors, and we accept that fact. So as far as we're concerned, that's it. It's Sinead from us.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to Philip for the report, and just very briefly, because I think it has a long-running saga, but from our perspective, there is no indication or no desire to revoke the planning approval. it is disappointing that we were here, but we accepted it, that mistakes can happen, particularly in a very busy department. So we accept that, and we trust that lessons have been learned, and there's been considerable information that's been put to us, not only from our planning officers, but we've had the benefit from considerable information from the River Faughan anglers as well, which we appreciate. But in consideration of all of that, there's no desire from anybody in our team to revoke the approval that's already been decided on. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Is there, can't see anybody else in the chamber indicating to speak. Is anybody online that wants to make any comments on this, please?
Chair.
Alderman Kerrigan, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just to concur with Councillor Boyle and Councillor Jackson, content with the course of action now currently, and not one of us can say we haven't made a wee mistake at some stage. And regards, we have looked at this before, as I say, since it's came in, we've looked at the information, and I don't see that the committee would have made any different decision, in my view, than the officers had made. And realistically, I'm contented they're all in the sand. I think this has been dragged on long enough. I don't see that there's anything additional that's came in, or anything out, that we haven't already considered. So I'm content with what we are. And I've just asked the question: do we need any? I know it is noted just for noting, but do we need a proposal for anything, Chair, or is it just a note on paper, or is there anything that we need or required to do in regards to try and get this drawn to conclusion?
Alderman Kerrigan, no, we just need to note the recommendation for today.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else want to come in on this one? Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, Philip, for that. We'll move on to agenda item 10, the EAA review. Suzanne will take us through this.
Thanks, Chair. Members, this is just to advise you for information that the officer team are undertaking a review of the application of the EIA regulations 2017. And as the paper outlines, this is following receipt of correspondence from River Faughan anglers dating back to last year. Officers did commence a review in March 2024, and a time frame had been indicated, but due to other challenges in terms of resources ongoing within the service during this period, it wasn't possible to advance and conclude that. However, work's ongoing, and we anticipate to have work brought forward to a conclusion, we hope, by the end, hopefully, of September of this business year, or the new business year. So just in addition to that, the review we're going to look at is not just going to look at those technical grounds that are being advised to us by River Faughan anglers. We're looking at other capacity building issues within the department as well, best practice, sharing best practice with other councils, and those sorts of elements. So we will bring back you the conclusions of that review. I'm also, obviously, you've had a chance to look at the lead information from River Faughan anglers today. I'm happy to take any questions just relating to the 5 points that are outlined at the end of the lead information. Point 1, those 3 applications, we've already received separate correspondence from River Faughan anglers that we will be responding to on those cases, and all the other matters will be considered as part of the review. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Has there been any comments or questions on this one? Councillor Jackson.
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the report that was presented to us before with the lead items, and there. And I know the report that indicate that it was anticipated the work would have been completed earlier, and these. I accept the fact that no, it has drawn on longer. I accept that was very it was very challenging times, remains to be challenging times, and in relation to where resources needed to be directed. So fully accept that. What does raise a question is around the capacity building. And Suzanne, I know you alluded to the fact that the capacity building is looking at models of best practice in other council areas. And that's good. And we would welcome it. But it also does raise the question, because like every single one of us are in this chamber, and I would have assumed that we are like we have every confidence in the professional planners that are employed by council to carry out a service on behalf of every, and we do. It's never called into question. This is the first time that I've seen that there was a requirement for capacity building internally within the team, and it does raise a question. So I just want further clarity in relation to that capacity building. Is it solely the they look at models of best practice, or was there any time where there was people carrying out tasks within the planning department that where they weren't qualified to do? Because that's we're all working on the trust that everybody working within the planning service is qualified to carry and professionally qualified to carry out the tasks and assess planning applications to the highest possible standard. And up until I read this report, I had never had any reason to question that. So I'm asking for reassurance more than anything. So is that been the case, and is this capacity building solely related to looking at models of best practice?
Just in terms, so really, the review is going to look at obviously, the detailed administrative grounds that are being brought forward by riverfront anglers, but just on a wider element in terms of capacity building. I'm not saying that we need capacity building, but it's an opportunity to, provide some continuous professional development for the team. We have undertaken EIA training throughout the department since 2015, both internally and also through the departments and also externally. And I know members have also had some training delivered externally as well. And I think obviously there's lots of recent PAC decision, things like that we are going to take the opportunity, in addition to looking at those detailed technical grounds, to review with the team, also share some of our experiences with other councils, the department. So it's just a wider element as part of the review. So there's no, I want to reassure you, I suppose, is what you're seeking, is that there's nothing that we're specifically reacting to here. This is just an opportunity to look at what will the review provide, and then on the basis of that, we'll also look at providing that further element of reassurance to within the team as well, and to council as a whole.
I appreciate that, Susanna. Thanks, because that's exactly where I was getting at. Is that this was a more staff development piece rather than a response to this initial piece of correspondence. So I am reassured on that. So thanks.
Thank you. Is anybody online there? Is any points they want to raise on this one? No. Thank you, members, for noting the updated position, and Suzanne for responses there. Moving on to agenda items 11 and 12, we're there for your information, list of decisions and appeals update. I'm going to raise any matters on that. No. Could a request will go into confidential now, please?